Hello, welcome to Chat with Dr. Kat. I'm Dr. Kat. Nice to see you today. I am really excited about today's episode. We have an amazing guest today talking about colleges, all about colleges and the strategies necessary and things to work on to make this the most successful for you and your child. What a hot topic. Right now, as we are filming this, most all of the acceptances, rejections, wait lists, everything is out. People are standing by to hear if they get off wait lists. So it's just a continued stressful time, exciting time, disappointing time, a lot of heightened emotions that come along with colleges. And I always say, oh, it's college season. I really think it's all year long. You know, it's prepping, it's planning, it's being involved, all those different things that take place, waiting to hear, dealing with the rejections, dealing with the successes, all of those things. And here's another thing to just keep in mind, and we'll get to that too. Sometimes when we get rejected from a place, that doesn't necessarily always have to be a bad thing. It could lead to another open door of opportunity that we really didn't think was maybe our main choice. So let's have an open mind. Think about today as a way for us to continue to open our minds. Think about what we want to do with our children, moving forward with colleges. So today, again, sit back, and I encourage you really to just listen and maybe then go back another time, listen to the episode again, take notes, but really, really listen. So today, welcome. We have Shellee Howard. Welcome. Oh, I'm so excited to have you here today. I'm going to read her bio because it is that impressive. Shellee Howard is the founder and CEO of College Ready, the 2026 Global Educational Consultant of the Year. She is also a college admissions and financial strategist, which she'll talk about as well, and a 2-time best-selling author. She's a UC graduate and a mom of 4 debt-free college grads, including one who was Harvard pre-med. An alum at this point. So thank you so much for joining us today. Shellee, let's just kind of jump right into it. Talk about your history. How did you get here into working into this field?
So much fun, and thank you so much for having me. I want to make sure that your listeners get massive value. So I'm going to spend just a brief minute about me and then get into how we can support their families. So College Ready was started as a why and a need. My oldest came home from middle school and he comes right through the kitchen to grab a snack and he's like, Mom, I know exactly what I want to do after high school. I'm like, seriously? Because you know I changed my major 5 times. And he goes, I know, but I really want to be a brain surgeon and go to one of those Ivy schools. And I'm like, wow, what happened at school today? He said, well, the high school counselor came to our 8th grade class and said we needed to pick our classes for next year. And then went on to say that we can do whatever, we want to do after high school. And I think that is what I want to do. I want to help people. I want to give them their life back. I'm thinking, wow, I am such an amazing mom. And then the reality hit. He says, Mom, will you help me? And I'm like, oh my goodness. Yeah, sure I will. Absolutely. And he left. And I was left to be sitting there thinking, we have no medicine in our family. We have no doctors. I was the first to go to college. I don't understand how I'm left to figure this out. And so I went from being this very proud mom to this young man who knows what he wants to do to this feeling of, I don't want to mess this up.
Yeah.
And so I went back to school and I got my master's degree, and then I went back to school and I became an independent educational consultant. Then I started touring 25 colleges a semester. And then my son did exactly what I suggested he do. That's a very important piece to all of this. And when he graduated, he applied to 12 schools, got accepted to 11. Wow. Of those, he had 7 full ride offers, got a full ride to USC, the presidential scholarship, and Harvard matched it. So
Wow.
we were able to send him to Harvard, and I didn't have to pay a dime.
Impressive.
That's how it got started.
Wow. So it really did come from a passion for your own child, and it really, that's what it is with all parents. You know, you want your child to be successful, and you want your child to be able to then not be strapped down to all the student loans after. Well, wow, that's impressive. So now you've moved forward, and you have three other kids that you did the same thing with. Tell me about that, because I know when we spoke about that a little bit before, you really showed me how, and I agree with you fully, that each child is different. So there is no cookie cutter. This is for every single child. So tell us a little bit about that too.
It's so important. And, College Ready started as me, a mom on a mission. That was 18 years ago. We just finished our 18th application season. And some parents are like, I don't even want to do this once, let alone 18 times.
Yeah.
But I now have a team of 11, and we have essay editors and test strategists and career, reviewers. It takes a village. It's no longer just, oh, let's wake up and decide if we want to plan for college. And so I really want to let parents understand, if you're feeling heavy or overwhelmed, just know it's because you're trying to do this alone. And it's like playing a board game for the first time and not knowing the rules, and the stakes are really high. And so I want to honor where you're sitting right now, parents, because I'm sure you've heard people get excited they got in, and at the same time very sad that they didn't, and it doesn't seem to make sense to anybody. I have intentionally stayed offline on all the social media forums because it is a disaster out there. And so I would encourage you to get the real information. And that's what I want to share with you today, because there has been more success. More students get accepted this year than any other year. More money has been given than any other year. Students are doing amazing things that will be mind-blowing without stressing them out. Last night, I interviewed one of my students who got accepted to every UC school. And I asked him, I said, was it
Wow.
horrible? Are you overwhelmed? Are you miserable? And he goes, are you kidding me? I just did what I love to do. And then I wrote some essays and it was great. And I was like, and that is how it shall be.
Yeah. What is the flip side of that though? When you have a child that gets into all the schools and they're facing the fact that maybe their best friend didn't get into any UC schools, or definitely not the one they wanted, or because you do. I mean, I know with my own children, there were some examples of children that their parents would walk up to me and say, she got in nowhere. And I said, what do you mean nowhere? Well, they got into these two schools that were just their absolute safety, but got in nowhere else with a 4.6 GPA. And so there's heightened levels of emotions. So with those kids that do get into a lot of schools, or even get into one, but it's their number one choice or one of their top 5, what do you say about the guilt that they, because I do believe they feel guilt and they don't want to talk about it because somebody else will get upset. What do you see with that?
Yeah. I addressed it on my podcast last night. The podcast is Parents Is Your Teen College Ready. And I was interviewing this student who had just been accepted to all the UCs. And I was kind of struck by exactly what you're talking about. I was explaining to him the goal of the podcast is to inspire families that it is possible. So please don't play small, that it's not a big deal, because it is a big deal.
It's
and
huge.
you should be celebrating, right? And he said, well, Shellee, there's a lot of my friends who didn't get in, and I feel bad for them. I feel like if I tell them my success, that's going to make them feel worse. And so he's holding in all of this incredible success that he's had because he doesn't want to hurt another person.
Yeah.
And I said, as amazing as that is, and your parents should be so proud of you.
So proud. Yes.
I want you to realize that you need to inspire other students that it is possible, that students can be successful and that it is possible to be gracious as well as accomplished. So I was trying to explain that he doesn't need to feel bad about his accomplishments. Of course, he doesn't want to go around bragging and telling everybody they're not as good as him. And I said, it is walking a fine line. It's a very adult thing to have to do, but it will serve you well for the rest of your life. It's important that people know how hard you worked for your success. And as soon as I let him talk about everything he's done, it got easier for him to talk about his success because it wasn't given to him for sure.
You know, that is a big part of it. And, through our discussion today, we're going to talk about some specific things that you deal with and what you encourage and the advice that you give and the structure to what you do. But there is this entire emotional component that goes along with it. Not only you're dealing with the emotions of the child, but the emotions, I should probably say student. I mean, they are still a child, yet we expect them come up with what your life career is going to be. It's overwhelming, but you're also dealing with the emotions of the parents. So, and throughout the process, right? So let me ask you this. What do you do when you come across a child, a student who has an idea, maybe a pretty strong idea of what they want to do, but it really does not match what the parents want that student to do?
So the first thing that we do is we actually talk about it. And I am not a therapist. I probably should have the credentials after so many therapy sessions, but I honestly lean in and I help clarify what's really being asked. And so here's how I do it. I think practicality will help families. So the first thing that we talk about is I ask the student, do you want to go to college? And that's if everybody just assumes they do. I want to hear them say it because then it becomes their why and not their parents' why. And so that first step of owning it is such an important piece. And so when the student will say, I have had a few say no, that's a whole nother podcast. But the ones who do, I simply say, tell me why you want to go to college and what you want to learn. So now we're really allowing the parent to hear what that student is weighing heavily. They'll share, and then I say, great, parent, did you know all of that? And the parent always, 100% of the time says no. This is the first time I'm hearing of it. So it does stem from a lack of open communication because what the child believes is not always what is true. And the child believes that the parent already has an opinion about what they want to do. And it may be good and it may not be good. I'll give you an example. Had a parent and student wanted to be a botanist major. And the parent was freaking out. They did not want to send them to NYU for $100,000 a year to be a botanist major. And so the parent coached me ahead of time, say, we've got to change their mind. And I said, I can't change their mind, but let's just hear what they have to say. Long story short, the very beginning of the meeting, I asked the student, I have a brown thumb. Can you help me understand how to care for my plants? And she goes, I have no idea. I don't like dirt. And I'm like, what? And she said, well, I said, what, you want to be a botanist major? And she goes, well, yeah, because I want to save the environment. Oh, so you don't really care about planting plants. You care about saving our environment. Well, yeah, that's exactly what I want to do. So you really are thinking environmentalism. That's a thing? I didn't even know that was a thing. And the dad is sitting there with the mouth wide open going, all this time, all of these sleepless nights, I just didn't understand what my child really wanted. And so a lot of time, it is just they don't really hear each other. The child thinks that the parent already has judgment about, I'm not paying for an art major, or I'm not paying for you to be in theater. And the parent's thinking, I don't want to pay for you to have a great view at UC Santa Barbara. This is a serious. So there's these things that they're both holding on to that unless we have this open discussion, which is moderated, making sure that we're both playing nice, and helping them to navigate this, to get clarity before they make some big time mistakes is so incredibly valuable, because at that point they hear each other and there's a whole new shift to support.
Well, yeah, because, just piggybacking off of what you just said, is that a lot of times they don't know what they want to do. And I think they also feel like at times they need to say this big profession because five other of their friends have a big profession that they're talking about, but they don't really know what they want to do. So that is really important. And you probably will have some type of degree after this because you have to deal with so many emotions. And then you're also probably dealing with parents. You made a comment saying that you're the first that went to college. So what do you deal with parents who have never been to college and now this is their child wanting to go to college and they want this so badly? How do you work with that?
It's really important. I have a lot of families that they might have gone to college in another country. And so now they come to the US and they're very educated and they want to give their child everything and they don't want to mess it up, but they don't know the system at all. And then I have families that are neither mom or dad went to college, so it's a first gen, just like me. The most important thing that I can do for families is to give them knowledge. It's like if I pull out a board game and ask you to win without giving you the instructions. It's like, what do you want me to do with this board and this dice and this piece of paper? I don't know what to do with it, and it causes anxiety and frustration and overwhelm. But if I'm able to give the parents the knowledge they need to know what it takes to get accepted to college, what it takes to pay or not go into debt, then helping the child understand what a college is looking for. How can you prepare yourself for that? And then help them both understand that we're really helping our child adult. College is a stepping stone to adulting. It's not the end game.
Right.
So I'm supporting the parent and giving them the roadmap. I'm helping the student understand how to stand out from, it's no longer a test score and a GPA. That's the minimum. So how are they going to stand out? And then the overall, I'm helping the whole family dynamic understand what can they do to support their child so they can launch into adulthood and not have to come back home and feel terrible about the choices they made. So it is all very important, and it comes down to helping them know what they need to know and then allowing them to ask any and every question.
That's so important because, there are so many different factors that go into it. And, a lot of things that I've been hearing from people and suggestions and questions, and even with my own experience with my children is, it almost feels like no one knows what the colleges want. Again, you've got the kid with 4.6 GPA, vice president, president of this, involved in clubs, internships, created a business, did all sorts of things, and are not getting in. And, they're trying to figure out these patterns. So what do you say to that? What are colleges looking for? And what is this, some of the codes that people need to help crack? Because we do hear this a lot.
Sure. So what you're speaking about is what we call in our industry checking the box.
Okay.
So that's not what colleges want. For a student who is doing this and that and this and that, and they're not sleeping, they're doing this and this and this, colleges are not interested because they know they cannot sustain that healthfully. And so what are they looking for? They want to know who is the teenager, what have they done, and what have they learned from it. That's it. So all these people are, I check the box for community service. I check the box for a sport. I check the box for grades. I check. But it's very apparent that they didn't do it for themselves. And they just went through an exercise but it didn't help them get ready for college or adulthood. So colleges are not naive to what's going on. And so I hope at College Ready, my team and I, we help families get really clear. Number one is we need the child to get to know who they are. And so parents, I encourage you to do this exercise. Ask your child for, an afternoon date. Take them to yogurt, buy them a cookie, whatever that date looks like. Walk at the park, the beach, and ask them, who are you? And the look on their face will explain it all. Yeah. They don't know. They don't know. They know that on social media, they're not as good as everybody else's best day. They know that they're not the smartest kid because somebody has a better GPA. They know that they are not the best test taker because somebody has a better test score. So they have all of this evidence that is pointing to they have no idea. And so I want you to think about what do colleges want to know? Who's that child? And if your child can't even tell you, the parent, who they are, they're going to have one heck of a time writing an essay and an application, telling the university exactly who they are, what they learned, and what matters. So everybody's trying to check a box, and colleges is saying, stop doing that. They're saying, we just want to know, is your child a good fit for our institution? Mm-hmm. They have more students than they'll ever need. What they're trying to figure out is, will your child get here, settle in, make the school a better place, socially, academically, so when they leave, they graduate in 4 years on time, put the diploma on the wall, and tell everybody what an amazing experience it was. Because now you're marketing for them. And now the cycle happens all over again. College is a business. So if you start to approach it as such, you're going to think, wow, I totally get it. So if you're just having your child tutor, not going to wow anybody.
Yeah.
Unless they want to be a teacher. If they're feeding the homeless and they're scared to death of the homeless, not a good plan. So it really comes down to what we call, I've coined the phrase passion with a purpose. Mm-hmm. And we've been talking about it for 18 years. People are now just starting to understand what that means, but we help students lean into their gifts, their talents, their advocacy, their passion, and do something about it and have them lead others to create that change. A teenager on their own has no idea how to do that.
Yeah.
And if you're a well-meaning parent, they may not want to listen to you, and I'm sorry. But the reality is that's what they need to do. They need to show colleges who they are, what matters, and what have they done about it. Mm-hmm. And so just checking boxes, getting the perfect GPA, that means that you can study, mm-hmm. which is one of the elements you need at college, but definitely not the only.
Okay. But when you say check the boxes, those applications are checking boxes. You're checking boxes, the questions they're asking, or, what have you done? And, so I've had 2 Girl Scout troops with my girls, and they were very dedicated to, you've got these kids that they're so involved in so many different things, and everything was about check the boxes. And then what do I put first? And then, the other thing I saw was, with a couple of the girls that I was working with, when they were talking about everything that they were doing, is there was almost that not wanting to brag, even in the application process. I mean, you talked about the student on your podcast last night who didn't want to brag about the UC, all the colleges he got into, which, if you're listening, spectacular, congratulations. But they have to check the boxes, but then they don't know how to necessarily say what they've accomplished because they don't want to be braggadocious, right? Yeah. So how do you do that?
Yeah. I actually have to teach them. It's a skill.
Okay.
So well-meaning parents raise our children, don't brag, don't boast. People don't like it. You won't get invited over for a sleepover. Right. That's just what we teach. Now I have to unteach all of that and say, if you do not brag, if you do not boast, and if you do not back it up, you will not go to college. That's what I have to tell them. And they are so not understanding what I mean. So I'll give you an example. I on their activities, honors, and awards at the UC system, they have to list 20. On the Common App, they list 10. So they have to list these accomplishments. Students will just randomly off the top of their head just da 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 da. I had a student who came to me. We always start with a conversation, and I said, "Let me see your list." And at the top, he had a club at his high school. And it was basically just a cultural club, and it wasn't very impressive. And then at the bottom was an Eagle Scout project,
At the
which
bottom.
is incredibly impressive. Well, guess what? If a college has 4 to 6 minutes to read your entire application, if they're not impressed with the top 3, guess what? They're never getting a number 10 or number 20. And so that's a small part of it. On top of that, students will say, another example, I am part of our National Honor Society at my high school. That's what they will write. For the reviewer, they know at some high schools, National Honor Society is a pizza party. At some, it's an incredibly rigorous process.
Okay.
Now you're leaving it up to them to decide which one it is. Is it impressive or is it a pizza party? So instead, the student needs to put in, I was selected 1 out of 78 students by a 3-panel interview in which I had to write an essay of 650 words where I was selected. Do you see the difference?
Oh, that's a huge difference. Huge difference.
So they
Yeah.
did the thing, but they don't know how to explain the thing. It's like parents on your resume or your CV. If you were just to put, I had a job, wow, that's great. You had a job. And if you
Right.
don't go into what you did or learned or how it made you, it's the same problem. So you're leaving this up to a student who is just checking boxes. Yes, I got it done, but they didn't do it well. And so we at College Ready communicate with them. And so what you're telling me is this: we don't make it up, we don't lie, we don't embellish. We just have a conversation. So tell me, on here it says you had the Eagle Scout. What did you do for that project? Oh my gosh, the project was amazing. I did this and this. And now all of a sudden you're like, whoa, that's nowhere on this application. Oh, well, yeah, but I didn't really have fun doing it. And I'm like, fun is not what they're looking
No.
for.
No.
That's what I'm talking about. That's where the problem is.
That is because it's true. They don't know necessarily how to elaborate, and just that one little technique you just said, that is big. I can even say through my own experience of college tours and everything else, certain schools we went to go and visit, they didn't talk about Girl Scouts. And again, my experience with Girl Scouts, you're talking about Eagle Scouts. That's a huge thing. I mean, it's a massive project. So the girls get their gold award, which is the Eagle Scout, right? So I remember attending some college tours in the South where Girl Scouts, that's huge. And we were in this huge basketball stadium, right? They had the big, sign where they're talking about the college and everything else. And then they said, these are things that are standouts for us. And one in particular, are there any Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts here today? Please stand. And I thought, what? Like, I had never seen this. And then you saw all of these students stand up. And of course, I'm poking my daughter, stand, this is amazing. You worked hard. And then they said, any of you here, please remain standing. The rest, please sit down. You are fantastic. Please remain standing if you worked and earned your Eagle Scout or your Gold Award. And then they talked about the scholarship that goes along with that and how big this is. And so, you know, that was impressive for my daughter because she didn't really see how big that was. And it did take that moment I've always talked about, and that's why, I said this is always so great and you can bring out your passion, and they did. But it was such a huge impact for those students there because I think oftentimes, Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts can be something maybe not always, but bear with me, everybody who's listening, could be a little embarrassing, right? And
Sure.
so, what you just said is huge. It's learning how to package all this amazing work and things that you did.
It's so
Yeah,
important.
wow.
And that's the difference you'll see of the people who don't understand why their child didn't get accepted.
Right.
They have some of the really great stuff, but they didn't package it, or they sent in an essay that didn't do a great job explaining how they're unique or different, or their letters of recommendation might have not been great because they didn't take the time to get to know their teachers. Like, what parents are not understanding is it's not just a GPA and a test score. There's factors that are out of the child's success because they don't even know they're happening.
Yeah.
And when a school writes to a university about here's what we offer and here's what we don't offer, and a student says the opposite on their application, there's a huge problem there.
Sure.
So there's so many things that people just don't know. Like, I went back to the rules of the game, that they would do it differently if they knew. And that's why people hire college ready, is because they're like, okay, you've been doing this, you've been successful. All we want to do is help our child be successful. Can you do that? And oh, so much more without the guessing.
Yeah.
Lately, it's a lot of guessing. People are just kind of throwing up their hands and being frustrated. And that is really hard for me to watch because colleges do tell us what they're looking for, but people just seem to think they already know.
Yeah. Interesting. I mean, even when you just said letters of recommendation, that was in what you just said was a standout because, a lot of times kids just say, hey, can you write me a letter of recommendation? Or I've heard, here's a kind of a background of who I am so that the teacher then knows who they're writing about. But oftentimes they don't sit down with that teacher and let them see who they are. Okay,
Exactly.
that's a big thing. That's a big thing as well.
Well,
So,
on that, think about it, the teacher. If it's a good teacher, he or she's going to have hundreds of these letters to
right.
write. They don't get paid to do them. And so, if your child has a relationship with that teacher, they're not just a number who was in my class, whose application are they going to do first? They have a choice. It's not
You're
first
right.
come, first serve.
You're right.
So they're going to write a glowing one for Jimmy, who spent time, brought him a coffee to class, shared some, great stories, versus, the other student who really never raised their hand in class and now is coming to them requesting some support. That's another thing that people just aren't taking into account. And it's unfortunate because if they knew that, I'm sure a student could genuinely get to know their teachers, because teachers want to get to know their students.
They do. They do. And I think, I would always say, again, to my daughters, I remember one of them had this teacher who was from Ireland. And my daughter was kind of struggling with connecting with the teacher. And it was it was actually a Spanish class, but the teacher was from Ireland with a strong Irish accent. And sometimes they would say, okay, they were struggling sometimes with what she was saying. And she didn't want to go in and speak with her at first. Wound up working out wonderfully, but I said, your grandfather was from there. Let's you have this connection. there's a history there. That is an instant connection that you could bring to the table. And of course, a lot of times they don't want to hear it from the parents, but these are techniques that I'm hearing you say that you need to do where they're looking for that connection, because you're right. I mean, they are going to go to the kid that they know first, because that's going to be the easier one to write. And then for them, check off the box. Now I only have 99 left to do. Yeah, that's a great point.
And that's what I mean when I say it has to be uniquely done by each child, each teenager, because there is no one way to do it.
Right.
Some students are later, some are followers. Some are quiet, some are outgoing. It's not better one or the other, but the student needs to be genuinely them and not just checking boxes. That's what's missing in this process for a lot of families who are not getting the acceptances they thought they should.
So then what do you do with the child that is an amazing student but does not want to engage in anything else? No sports, no clubs, nothing.
Sure.
Because maybe they're just having difficulties connecting maybe with others, but is an amazing, amazing student.
Sure.
How do you work with that?
First, we have a conversation with the student and a separate one with the parent, because a lot of times that student may be on the spectrum. Mm-hmm. They may be insanely smart and just socially struggle. And there's no shame in any of that, but if nobody's captured that, we want to make sure it's addressed before they leave for college, because that's where a lot of the mental struggles come from when they get there.
Yes.
Is they feel very isolated. And so we don't do it to call a student out in a bad way. We do it to help the family really prepare for their future. If that is not it, if a student is just in academia because it comes easier than being social, which is a lot of times, we will help that student figure out how to collaborate with other people in a way that they are comfortable with, which means it could be that they do it in writing versus face to face. It could be that they do it in a group setting and not in one-to-one. Okay. So what we have to ask the student is, have you tried this, a sport, a music, theater, building things, spending time serving your community? Have you done this? Mm-hmm. And if they say no, then okay, great. Have you ever wanted to? Well, yeah, great. I just didn't know how. Oh, so simple. We do this. Sometimes it's as simple as they don't know how. Mm-hmm. And it's so crazy to think, but nobody has taught them how.
Right.
Then there's the other student who is like, yes, I have, and it hasn't gone well, and I am not popular, and I don't fit in, and I feel awkward, and they become very vulnerable. And I say, so help me understand, what are your gifts and your talents and your strengths? And they're like, I don't know. Mm-hmm. And I said, would you like to know? Well, yes, I'd like to know. And it just happens to be that their gifts and talents and strengths are things of which are more intellectual, not social. And I tell them this story all the time, that I am a really good leader, but I am a terrible hostess. When people come to my home, I don't think about giving them water. I don't think about offering them cake. None of that is natural to me at all. And over the years, I've had to work really, really hard to become a better hostess. Mm-hmm. That's all this is. You can choose never to do it and just always say, well, that's just not who I am. Or you can lean into it and say, it's not my gift, but I'm going to try this one thing first. And when I have success at one thing and somebody says, oh my gosh, that lemonade was so amazing. And I'm like, oh, well, I poured it from a bottle, but thank you, right? It's still, the student is doing the same thing and saying, wow, they really do value that I bring this intellectual piece to the conversation. They do value me. I want to try that some more. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it is just really leaning into them and what they can bring, and helping them to step into trying it, not jumping in all the way, but simply testing it. And even if they do fail, we talk about what did you learn from that experience and how can we be better the next time we do it. So it's honoring them and who they are, but also not allowing them just to stay stuck, because it's not going to help them in adulthood when they have to get the career, right? In every profession, we have to collaborate at some level. It doesn't matter. At some level, they're going to have to do that.
You're right. You're right. And I think that sometimes that is the missing piece of, learning how to navigate through life. I have a couple of people that I work with, students that I work with, young adults that are in college, and they're always complaining. I get this complaint of, can you believe I have this professor who gives me a grade based on my attendance? And I always feel at that time with professors, I wish they wouldn't count attendance, because this is the moment where that kid needs to show up and realize I have to show up so I know the material. Once I know the material, then I can do well. If not, because the professor sees me, I can then go to office hours. That professor knows, well, you're somebody that always shows up. I'm going to give you that extra time, or I may give you that extra point on that essay because you do show up. But this is an opportunity for that student to learn that, right? Because if they're still forcing it, then they don't have that teachable moment that needs to then carry out to, you got to go to work. You have to show up. You have to do that. I always say that also with consequences, when, kids don't want to have consequences, or parents say, oh my gosh, I don't want to punish. Well, if we speed, we get a speeding ticket. We can, right? If you don't pay a bill, you'll get a late fee. There are consequences within our life, and we need to know that. So I think that's just impressive what you just said, because eventually, you don't want it to be, well, that's not my child. They just don't want to. But we have to take the time to look at why. And if we don't work at it now, it's just going to carry on, and then they're not going to be successful.
So, right.
Right? So, okay. So I want to pivot a little bit, because another one of your amazing talents that you have is scholarships, because that does become another fear. I hear this constantly amongst my friend group, amongst, people I work with, of, my kid wants to apply to all these colleges. We can't afford that. The average American, how can you afford $100,000? And that's not even maybe traveling back and forth and everything else. So scholarship, sometimes you get merit. There's some that give none. Others give free rides. So how do you navigate that?
So the first thing we ask is we first ask the student what is most important to them, the academic fit, the social fit, or the financial fit. And it usually will go academic, social, financial. Some put social first. And then I look at the parent and I'm like, okay, for you, what's most important? And they put financial, academic, social. So that's where we see the first time that they haven't had this discussion. Right? And so that, again, it comes down to lack of communication. And here's the mindset that has to shift for a family to get out of their own way. Number one is, if a child wants to do a career that must have a college degree, engineer, lawyer, CPA, doctor, whatever, it has to happen unless they're going to change their career, which could, I suppose. So with that in mind, let's lean into it and say, okay, my child needs to go to college to get to do what they want to do. Now you're looking at it from a frame of reference that is like, oh, we have choices. The second part of that is, with that choice, how are we going to prepare for this? And that means you need to have that conversation with your child, that the hard conversation about money.
Yeah.
Instead of saying money doesn't go on trees, we can't afford college, because one of my parents told me that. I would frame it to be, if we both work to figure out a strategy, this will be possible for us. If we don't, we're going to be in trouble. And if you look at it from a place of there is a way and we will figure it out, that gives both of them a place to breathe. So what does that look like for the family? Did they start to save money at a young age, or have they never saved a dime? Have they put money in the right assets, or are they in the wrong assets? Have they made an income that shows that they should be able to afford it, but have lived a lifestyle that causes them to be in the red at the end of the month every month, right? Colleges want to know, can you afford it? They're not asking you, is it going to hurt?
Right. Good point. Good point.
And so again, it's reframing some of this. Then the next part is, if you are a need-based family, then it comes down to, can your child, do they have the ability to get a merit scholarship? Do they have the desire to work that hard? Because it doesn't just happen. You have to create a plan and go for it.
Right.
So that's another conversation. Then if it is, you know what, Susie, we have not prepared for this. We are just making ends meet, truly. We are not being frivolous. This is just our reality. Let's work together. So that in that conversation, I say, well, starting in 4th grade, there are college scholarships that Susie can be doing. 4th grade.
Really?
Has Susie done any of them?
Wow.
Well, no, we don't know where to find them. Okay, great. Let me show you where to find them. Wow. Okay. Well, I don't know. Susie's really, really busy. I don't think she's going to have time to complete scholarships. Okay, great. Susie, would you mind keeping track of what you do every minute of the day for 7 days? And let's see if there's any time for this. Because if that's the truth, that's the truth.
I like that.
I am
I like
on my
that.
phone a lot, and I am going to the beach and the mall, and the reality gets real. They do
Yes.
have the time. Everybody has the time. They just don't want to do it.
Right.
And so instead of saying, oh, yes, you do have the time, I'm like, great, that's fine. Let's just dig into it. Let's explore that. And now we're carving out, during this amount of time, Susie, as if she had a job, would be working on scholarships. Okay, there's one way. The next is picking the right colleges for Susie's CV or resume. So if the best way I can describe this one is, parents, put on your business mindset. If I came to you and I said, I really want to work for you, and you say, can I see your resume? And I'm like, well, I've been kind of busy. Okay, great. What have you been busy doing? Well, my friends and I, we like to just hang out. Okay, well, what do you and your friends like to do? Well, hang out on our phones and, look at Instagram. And okay, well, I'm sorry, but that's not going to get you a job.
No.
And I can't even pay you for that. I mean, if you want to intern and prove yourself, I like you, maybe I'll do that, but otherwise, no, thank you. Versus child B, who comes to you and says, hey, I really want to work for you. And you say, can I see your resume or CV? And well, here's the problem. I have 4 pages that I've really tried to narrow down for you. And I know that that's going to take you some time to read through, but I could do your job and you can go on vacation. I really want this job. Are you kidding me? I will make a job and I will find a way to pay you. College is the same exact way, parents.
Yeah.
Same way. If you have a child that is doing amazing things, that child will get accepted and they will get money all day long. If they are doing the minimum they can do and they have nothing else to show as to what they've been doing, would you hire them? If you were the college, would you admit them? These are the things nobody really wants to talk about. They just look at their child who's struggling with overwhelm. I ask, why is there overwhelm? Well, they're doing like 20 clubs at their high school. Well, stop it.
Right.
Colleges don't care about 20 clubs at your high school. Do one international project that they are passionate about, that they're leading others to create change. 1 hour a week. Oh, remember what I said at the beginning? It's
Yeah.
playing the game without the rules.
Right.
And this is part of the scholarship problem. There is $53 billion that Harvard can give out every year.
Wow.
Getting into Harvard is 2% chance.
Right.
There are little over 2,500 colleges. There are 10 colleges that are tuition free. The student just has to work at them. It all comes down to the saying, pay me now, pay me later. My firstborn, he used to ask me all the time, Mom, will this ever be worth it? I'm like, well, what be worth it? Studying. Well, yes, honey, you're going to be brilliant and that's going to help you adult. What about like being part of like community service? Yes, honey, caring about how others are surviving is going to be really important for empathy as you grow up and you're a parent. Oh, so I want you to ask parents, really, what is the problem that's going on? And is it a bad thing what that child is doing? If they are taking too many AP, IB, or dual enrollment classes and they are failing a lot of them, then they're not lining up with their academic strengths.
No. Yeah.
So it all comes down to, we assess every student. And for your listeners, I'm going to give them the opportunity for this assessment in which we can tell the family, you are on the right track or you are on the wrong track. And now you get to decide what you do with that information. Majority of families that come to me are on the wrong track. They're doing what their cousin did, their sister did, their aunts, uncles, brothers, friend did.
Yeah.
And they are just trying to grasp at anything. And unfortunately, if you Google college admissions, you get well over, I think, 300,000 different pieces of advice.
Right.
None of it's right because none of it cares about what your student is and what matters to them and how they're going to prove it. So if you can just stay focused on your child and help them get ready to adult, college is going to be there and it's going to be the right fit college for the student. They're going to get scholarships. They're going to feel like they belong at the right place. My daughter said, please don't make me go to Harvard, Mom. And I'm like, I promise I won't. Why do you say that? And she goes, they're all so smart. I would fail out my first semester. She knew, we had those conversations. What is a good fit for her? She didn't want to work that hard. I wouldn't want to work that hard.
Right.
And that's okay. And that's what I want to just honor, that it is okay. And there is a perfect fit school for every student and every family. And once we find that, it's amazing. I keep in touch with every student who's gone through my program, and they will come back and they will say, Shellee, remember when I had tears I didn't get into that dream school? I had no idea that this school was waiting for me.
Yes. Yes.
And it is the perfect fit school. And I am so happy here, and I cannot imagine going to any other school. And thank you for helping me see that.
Because it's true. A lot of people have in their mind, what everyone knows as the top schools. Everyone wants to go to these certain places, but it's not necessarily their fit. And I have to say, I haven't seen this level of numbers that I've seen where kids are going to school, they're there a semester or a year, and they need to transfer, or they come back home. They come back home, then they go to community college, which I think is fabulous until they're ready. And, I know that a lot of people are saying, oh, the pandemic's been over. It still hasn't affected students. We still see it. Absolutely, we see it. There, these groups of children that were in, you know, prime learning, adjusting, social, everything, and they're locked at home and isolating and everything else. Have you been seeing that those numbers when you work with those kids, or are you able, just based on what you said, it sounds like you're finding those kids are getting into that fit, because if not, they come home.
Yeah, and I tell this story often like this. When I dropped off my son at Harvard, he was my firstborn, and all the parents were crying and they were so distraught. And my son looked at me and he says, "Mom, why aren't you like them?" I said, "Honey, if you were at home on my couch doing drugs, I'd be crying." I go, "I am leaving you at one of the best places I could imagine you be, with the right people, with the right support. I'm celebrating you. This is
Yeah.
exactly what I want for you." And I left and I got on an airplane and I cried the whole way home. So I am very normal, right? But
Because
I
I was going to
wanted
say,
him,
Shellee, I was bawling.
right? But I didn't want him to see me
Hmm.
sad, because he would have emotionally felt
Hmm.
I left my mom.
Yeah.
I didn't want him to have that burden of I'm sad. I wanted him
Hmm.
to have that joy of I'm celebrating you, honey.
Yeah.
Like, this is what we've both been planning for, right? And so I think, I get on the airplane, they couldn't console me. Like, I was like losing my mind. And they're like,
Me
"We're
too.
okay, ma'am. We're okay." And I'm like, "Ah." So I get it. But do we need our children to know that we're scared, we're sad, we're lonely, we're what? I wanted him to be, "You've got this,"
Yeah.
right? And that's what I want families to understand. When you plan and do this well, they're prepared.
They're
When you
prepared.
don't, they're left to figure this out on their own,
Yeah.
and they're not ready. If you're not ready, they're not ready. And they make all these mistakes. And my son actually was an advisor at Harvard his second year in the dorms. And he had multiple kids who wanted to commit suicide because
Yeah.
they could not hang. And I said to him, like, "How do you handle that?" He goes, "Well, we get them the right help that they need.
Wonderful.
But the problem is, Mom, they should have never have been here."
Yeah.
And
It's true. Parents are sometimes it's one track, and also the kid, because they feel that is what they should be doing. And it's just, I mean, this could be a whole other episode, but, we're one of the only countries that really send our children off to different states and different all over the place. I mean, most of the times, you hear, from different places that they go to uni where, their family is. And there's not a lot of movement as much as it is here. And I think that is a big part of the question. And I know you cover this of, do you want to stay in the same state? Like some families now, what I'm seeing is because of what's going on in the world, or just what's going on within our family, we want our child to stay in the state in which we reside. And other ones, you want them to, they spread their wings in California, or they spread their wings, going to a different state. But it's vital to see if your child is ready. And I think that's also why we've seen a tremendous amount of kids, I would say much more than we have in past years, going to community college, because they're just not ready yet. They're not ready to leave the home, or maybe they didn't like the college choice that they got, and that's okay. It always seems that the parents may be more frustrated with that decision, and the kid is literally like, they have a plan. They have a plan. And I can respect that. But yes, it is important to find out where those kids are at. One other thing I want to talk about is passion projects. Now, I know you have a part of your company that works on passion projects, and how important that is, because a lot of times kids don't navigate that well either. So, tell me about that part too.
So it's important. And before we get off what you were talking about, I want to go back to core values. If your teenager has a core value of family and you send them across the US or country or globe, whatever, they are going to struggle no matter what. Because if their core value is deeply, I need my family, and that's very important to me, please listen to that. It's not going to change.
Yeah.
And we can't expect them to not ache for something that is deeply important to them. So that's why we start there and not in there. So I just wanted to kind of circle back on that, because it is such an intrinsic part of the process. As far as the Passion with Purpose project, this is probably the favorite thing that I get to do. I meet with students once a week, and we have built a nonprofit where I mentor students to lead other students to be the change they wish to see in the world. And this organization I created on my 4th trip to Africa. My first trip to Africa, I took my son to see if he wanted to be a doctor or not. My second time I was there, I went to South Africa to see the difference. My third trip, I was asked to go as a women's entrepreneur advocate, where I actually helped 50 women start businesses over there.
Oh, wow.
Because there's so much need, right? Give them $50, it's gone. But if you teach them how to farm their land, or teach them how to sew, or teach them how to build a business. So I went over there to do just that. We were angel investors. While I was there, I met a women's advocating attorney. So a gentleman who advocates for women, which in Africa is like an oxymoron. It just doesn't happen. And so I was fascinating. I'm like, what in the world do you do? And he says, well, when young girls become women, they're unclean and they have to stop their education. And I looked at him and I'm like, what?
Mouth hanging open. Yeah.
That's, we didn't ask for that. We don't want that. Like, that's not acceptable. And I said, so what happens? And he goes, they go into prostitution, then they get pregnant, and then the cycle starts all over again.
Oh my gosh.
And I was devastated. I'm like, I've just spent 20 days in Africa and nobody had told me this. I said, what can I do? And he says, well, I'm advocating to build an all-girls school where they can come live here and be educated. I'm like, great. What do I need? He goes, well, the problem is it takes $6,000 US. I said, where do I send the check?
Yeah.
That was it. And that's how it all got started. My whole passion. So it started with Shellee's passion with a purpose of, I have 2 daughters, and that is completely unacceptable. I would never want a young lady to miss an education because of something she can't control. So long story short, I came back to the US and I was telling my students one-to-one, like, this is this. I'm on fire. I'm just so fired up. And they all are like, how do we help? What can we do? This is not okay. How do we? And before you knew it, I have over 50 students who meet with me once a week. They've built 2 schools in Uganda. They have raised over $48,000. They have educated over 900 children. They're teaching skills like sewing and music and computers and law and psychology and all of their passions. They're teaching these children. Guess what? They're figuring out what they want to do for a career, for a major. As they're helping another human being, they're not worried that it's going to show up on social media that they're silly. They are in a place of support where they get to lean into the scary thing of, I don't know if I am good at this, but I'm going to try it, because they've got nothing to lose. All of a sudden, these children are raising funds to buy chickens and cows, to plant vegetables in a garden, things that they deeply care about, food insecurities or mental awareness, or our science students are teaching about malaria and about melanoma, and they're all leaning in, trying to figure out, how do I take what I love and help another human being? That's passion with a purpose. That's not checking a box.
No. That's
That's what we get to do.
that's impressive. I mean, I with what you just said, I mean, I went from tearing up to look, sign me up if you need a psychology mentor for any of these children who are figuring this out and helping. I'm serious. Please let me know. I'd be more than happy to do that. That's beautiful. I mean, I think it's definitely a beautiful, amazing thing. And you know, um, I had my experience, with my Girl Scouts and the passion projects that they came up with, and it's about helping people, and it's true. It's Shellee. It's so true that when you help others, you find out more about yourself, things that you need to not only work on, but things that you need to celebrate so that you keep going. You know, that's always has been a part of my life. My dad was such a huge advocate of that. Through He did a lot of teaching and writing about Maria Montessori.
Oh, yeah.
And here Maria, if you look at the history of Maria Montessori, you know, she looked at the development of empathy. Most of the time, children are not born with full levels of empathy. That's where you get that mine, and the struggle, and that's all part of learning. But through different things that we do of helping others and helping animals, that's where you develop empathy at a young age so that it can then carry on through. Wow, wow, wow. When you and I spoke before, get introduction, I had no idea that it was that huge. I mean, that is just a beautiful thing. And it kind of circles back to that. A lot of times parents and students are just randomly checking boxes of getting things done rather than truly finding a passion. And maybe it's not their initial passion to go and maybe help with the school, but through helping others and meeting with 50 other kids and meeting with you, they discover that. Wow. So that's a lot. So, when you and I met, why it was so important to get you on an episode was just that you cover so many different things. And I think as parents, we need to realize that it's not just how do you pick the college? Is my kid getting the right grades? Okay, it's everything. It's the passion, the discovering about what you can afford and not, what scholarships to get, because you don't want to strap your kid down after or yourself with all these huge loans. It's an interesting thing that I want to mention because what I see in my practice, I've seen this happen recently, which I hadn't seen before. And that was I'm working with a couple of people, women, that are in relationships, and a couple of men that are in relationships who the person that they're dating doesn't necessarily want to get married yet because they have such tremendous school debt.
Wow.
I hadn't thought about that. Look, no one wants to go into relationships with baggage, right? Always deal with the emotional baggage, what you bring to the table. We got to work that out because you don't want to carry that on to this next relationship. But there's also that financial burden of your college loans that then when someone married, that becomes part of what they take on. So yeah, that's just huge. So it has to be all of those different things. And, one of the things I'd also like to share with that is with my own daughter. We worked on, well, she put in the work for merit scholarship and even went back to the university she chose and asking for more based on other, full rides that the school she didn't want to go to, but showing them that. And then throughout, because of the things she does at her school now, she's recognized they gave her even more money sophomore year.
So good.
Right. And I'm hearing these things that you're telling me, that there's other things to do, with the next one. So look, you are a valuable wealth of information. And so on my Chat with Dr. Kat website, we're going to put direct links for people to be able to get to you. When we air this, we will absolutely put the links to you. And also, I know you did mention an assessment, that people can start with an assessment. So we can also have that, link on there. But this has been wonderful. Thank you so, so much. This has been just an amazing amount of information, because part of what I like with my episodes is that people are able to walk away with something tangible that they can do today, right? Today,
Yep.
tomorrow, in the future, but today. And you did that. You gave us so much of just sitting down and having conversations that you haven't had. This is brilliant. You have to sit down and talk about what it is that everybody wants and needs, and their thoughts and everything else. So thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining today. Shellee is just amazing. And again, I hope you sat down and listened to this episode and then go back again and start taking notes. There's so much information here, so many things you can do. Please reach out if you have any other questions. Reach out to Shellee and her team of people that can change the journey that you and your child go through. We want to be able to be successful. And again, there is a wealth of information out there on the internet. Not always the best. A lot of times it's taking you into different directions. Shellee has been able to bring that together. So if you have any questions, reach out. Questions to Shellee and her team, please reach out. Seek out as much information as possible. You want this to be smooth. However, life is life. Things are going to ebb and flow. There's going to be disappointments through this process. There's going to be successes. And one of the things that Shellee had mentioned is that, sometimes they have a mindset of where they want to go. They wind up at another college and they are in utter bliss and happiness. They found their place. It doesn't always have to be the school that we think, is where they should go. So, as always, just no fluff, no judgment, just real talk that leads to real change. If you have any thoughts, feelings, questions, please go to chatwithdrkat.com. Let me know. If you have any thoughts about being a guest, let me know. But have a great rest of the day. Thank you. Bye-bye.